Ryan here with Dark Rangers Inc. And have you ever found yourself getting ready for a night of imaging only to find yourself asking, what the heck should I even shoot tonight? Or even worse, you're going to a dark sky site and you haven't even picked out the target for the weekend. Inhibited by any of the tree cover, because just looking at photos of the campsite, it did look like there were a good amount of trees, but the campgrounds are kind of all facing in different directions. So when I get there, we'll find a good one that works for the target tonight, which I haven't actually picked out yet. If you're new to the hobby, or even if you've been doing it for a while, it can often be confusing knowing what target to choose based on the time of year or even the time of month. Should I be going after a galaxy, a mission nebula, reflection nebula? Should we be using broadband filters, narrowband filters? If I have a couple of different scopes, what's the best focal length to use? We're gonna go over all that and more, and I'm gonna share my years of experience and best practices that I've learned through trial and error, not opinions online, but through failing and succeeding, and teach you guys how to maximize good conditions and mitigate bad conditions, so no matter what, you're able to get good data. Because picking the right target at the right time with the right gear is as important as the integration and the processing itself. And if you don't do that, it's gonna make it really difficult to get good images. So today we're gonna go over target acquisition and help you guys take your astrophotography to the next level. So stay tuned. Now, when it comes to target selection, one of the most complicating things can be is that there's so many to choose from, but there's a lot of ways that you can really quickly narrow a lot out. And so I basically start at the top with a funnel and narrow it down to the best possible targets that I can do for that specific night. And usually what I do, and this is a tip that I want to give right off the bat, is I usually have 2 targets for each month. And that's because the number one thing I look at are my current conditions, both my Bortle class and then what the moon is doing. So if the moon's from between 50% and 100%, so basically from kind of half to full, I'm going to shoot in narrow band only. So if you're one shot color, that's going to be something like the L Ultimate. If you're shooting in monochrome, that would be like this 3 nanometer O3 filter that's only allowing in 3 nanometers of the visible light spectrum, and it's going to block all the rest. Now you might say to yourself, well, why wouldn't you just always do that? And the reason is because it's also blocking a lot of the good light, some of the subtle data that's coming in that really will get washed out by either bad light pollution or the moon anyway. So we really just want to focus in on that emission nebula data. And that's really the type of targets I go for that time of the month. When it's the new moon and the moon is between kind of 0 and under 50, probably even smaller than that, really that new moon week, I will go after more broadband targets. With monochrome, that's going to be an LRGB filter. With one shot color, that's either going to be a light pollution filter or what I consider kind of a hybrid filter like this Quadband, which lets in all of the RGB color, but in a 25 nanometer band pass. So not nearly as narrow as narrowband, which is usually between like 3, 6, and 12. This is 25, but a light pollution filter can be as wide as 100. So that's why I call it kind of a hybrid. It's in between the two. It's going to give you more light pollution protection than a light pollution filter, but not nearly as much as a narrowband. The best case scenario is to be under dark skies where I can use no filtration at all. With one shot color, there is a UV IR cut filter built into most astro cameras. If yours doesn't, or you're using a DSLR or mirrorless, it's good to use a UV IR cut filter. That's going to cut down on the star bloat and give you a little bit more sharpness, but it's not needed. If you don't have one, don't feel like you can't shoot or it's going to ruin your image, you can still get good results. With monochrome, the LRGB filters are going to allow all of that good light in. Same with one shot color and no filter. You're going to get bigger stars, more stark color, and all of those faint colors that you can't get. Orion is a really good example of this, where it is a bright target, but if you use narrowband, you're not going to see a lot of those subtle violets and purples and pinks that you would using something like either a light pollution filter that's very soft or no filter at all. You're going to see a lot more depth in the color, and it's not going to be kind of just a red and blue for the really strong oxygen and the O3. So narrowband is good because it blocks all the bad light, but it also blocks some of the good light. So my rule of thumb is to have 2 targets that I'm working on throughout every month, one for the moon being full and one for when it's not. Now, if you are in a constantly bad light pollution situation, you may be more stuck with narrowband or kind of this hybrid situation if you're using one-shot color, because shooting with no filter in a Bortle 8 or 9 is going to be really challenging. Now, is it a rule that can be broken? Sure. I actually never used to shoot even broadband in my backyard, but I did try it last year, and from Bortle 5, I did find a lot of success. The first thing I shot was the Pleiades, which is a reflection nebula, but it's really bright. And that brings me to, what are the things that you want to target in broadband? You really want to choose reflection nebula, galaxies, and dark nebula. You can shoot emission nebula in broadband as well, but because they're so bright and they do so well with the narrowband, I tend to save those targets for lesser conditions. When I'm in a dark sky site, for example, that's when I'm going to go for those faint targets. If I'm in a Bortle 1 or 2 zone, I'm going to go after those dark nebula, or even really faint nebula like the Squid Nebula, things like that, where I'd have a hard time getting them from home, even if I got a ton of integration time. So once I've kind of narrowed it down to the time of month and what skies I'm shooting under, that usually cuts the amount of targets down by a huge amount. Then I look at framing based on my sensor size and the amount of focal length I'm dealing with my telescope. So if I have multiple scopes running, there are certain targets that might look good at 960 millimeters out of my 140, but wouldn't look so good at 515 out of my 102 because they look really tiny in the center of the sensor. Conversely, there are some big wide field targets that I wouldn't want to go after near 1,000 millimeters. That would be much better with a wider field setup. And the way you can check that, there are numerous apps. You can check out Telescopius, you can use Stellarium, you can use the framing wizard in Nina. There's a lot of different ways you can do that. And when you're in there, you can usually take your thumb or your finger and move around the rectangle, which represents your field of view. Once you put in the sensor that you have and the focal length, it will give you a field of view indicator. If it's a square sensor, it'll be square, but usually it's a rectangle. And so I'll usually pick an area. Right now in the summer, you'd look at the Cygnus area, kind of in the Milky Way, because that's what we're shooting right now. In the summer, it's Milky Way summer nebula season. And you can really kind of zoom in on some of those applications and just kind of see. Obviously, you have the big targets that you've heard of, but a lot of times I've just kind of, scrolled around and looked for some cool stuff that maybe people don't shoot a lot. Once I have a good target for my light conditions and then the field of view, I'm still usually left with a handful of targets to choose from. Now, if I still can't decide, I base it off of how much time do I want to spend on this target. Am I looking for a quick and easy one? Am I a beginner? If I'm a beginner, then I'm going to pick big, bright targets that are going to be easy to capture. Maybe they don't need as much integration time and they're going to be easier to process. If I'm looking to challenge myself, I'll go after more of a faint target that does fit the other criteria that maybe I'll need more integration time. Like right now I'm doing SH2 115 and 116 with my 102. That is something that you can shoot in narrowband, so under bad conditions, but it is kind of a faint target. So I do need a lot of integration time. I'll probably have well over 30 hours to make that really look good, especially the S2 and the O3. So if I know that I have maybe 2 weeks or 3 weeks to give to a target, that will influence what I'm after. If I'm a beginner, then I want to pick those big bright targets like the Veil Nebula, North American Nebula, and targets like that are really going to pop, and I'm going to get a great result in a short amount of time, and they're going to be easier to process. Now you might be asking yourself, Ryan, how do you know about all these targets? And I do have some astronomy books. I would recommend going out and getting some so you can see, but let's be honest, guys, you can hop on Instagram or Astrobin and scroll through your feed and you're going to see a ton of examples, and people are usually posting what they're shooting now or they've been shooting over the last month or two. So they're usually going to be a relevant target. So if you're confused on, hey, you know what, I've narrowed it down. I know it's summertime. I want to go after an emission nebula because the moon is full. I'm looking for something bright. You can easily scroll through either Astrobin, social media, and find some great targets, which leads me to kind of the last thing that I think of when I'm going after target selection, and even the equipment that I'm going to have set up if I'm deciding between multiple scopes, and that's going to be the time of year. So right now, it being that it is summer, I'm really going after a lot of those emission nebula targets, and then if I do get under dark skies, there's a ton of dark nebula targets that I want to go after. In the fall, we have M33 and M31, which is going to be Andromeda and the Triangulum Galaxy. So even if you have a smaller scope, like an 80 or 90 millimeter APO, During galaxy season, you're kind of out of luck. The galaxies are going to look absolutely tiny on your sensor, but these really large galaxies that are a little bit closer than some of those is great time in the fall to go after those. In the winter, we've got a different nebula season where we've got the Cone Nebula, we've got Rosette, it goes down into the Horsehead Nebula, we've got Orion, you have the Heart and Soul, and several others. In the spring, of course, is the big galaxy season, and I haven't participated a lot in that in the past because I didn't have something with a lot of focal length. Thankfully, this year with the SCA 260 at 1300 millimeters and the 140 at 960 millimeters, I was able to get some good images. You can go after it at 400 or 500 millimeters. I know people still do, but to me it was just kind of underwhelming because I had this big sensor and then this little baby galaxy in the middle. So for me it wasn't exciting. When you're thinking of field of view, you don't have to go after something necessarily that does fill the whole thing, but what you could do is pick something that maybe had some supporting details in there, like IFN, which is that faint dust nebula. So if maybe you did have a wide field during galaxy season, you could go after Bode's and the Cigar Nebula. They're two nebula close together, so that way you have some more supporting details to fill the frame of view. And you also have the IFN that's floating around, that's faint dust nebula, but you need a lot of integration time to get that. You also have things like Markarian's Chain, which have a ton of galaxies in a small area. So there are ways to participate in every season, no matter what your equipment, but there are certain pieces of equipment that are better for certain times of year. So if you're looking at the spring, that's when time to break out your heavy hitter scopes, your big focal length. If it's the summer, you can go anything from a 15 millimeter wide frame and get the Milky Way all the way up to several thousand millimeters and go after little things like the Bubble Nebula or Crescent Nebula. And then in the fall, you're back to a wider field APO where you can go after Andromeda and M31. And then a similar thing in Orion and Winter Nebula season, where maybe you can be anywhere from about 250 all the way to close to 700 or 800 to capture those nebula, depending on the sensor size you have. So that's the last thing that I want to talk about is field of view. This is sometimes something that's complicated to people because they only associate it with focal length. But now with cameras advancing so much, getting a larger sensor is really the cheat code because you get the best of both worlds. If you can get all the way up to a full frame camera, for example, when I use a 960 140 millimeter APO with a full frame camera, it's giving me the same field of view as a scope half that size, maybe 500 millimeter of focal length with an APS-C. So I'm able to go after a lot of targets. It gives you a lot more flexibility to have a bigger sensor. So if you are deciding on equipment, you don't always have to just go after a tiny scope to get wide field. If you are able to and you can save up your pennies, you can always get a bigger sensor, which will give you more possibilities and allow you to get a bigger slice of the night sky. There are certain targets that are just too big for a given field of view, and so you can immediately eliminate them. Just like on the other side, if you have like something like a Red Cat 51 at 250 millimeters, there's just going to be targets that are so tiny, it's just going to look like a little speck on your sensor. So those are the ways that I really narrow down my target selection. Again, my emergency plan is I will literally just go to Astrobin and scroll and see, what's a great target. One thing I really want to challenge myself on to advance my astronomy is that itself is getting more into the actual science of astronomy and going after lesser known targets. Every year as you grow in your astrophotography knowledge and experience, you will always go after new targets like I do, but it is nice to kind of hit some hallmark targets each year and you can see your progression. But one thing I really want to challenge myself in the next 6 to 12 months, especially if I'm able to get in a situation where I can have a scope under dedicated dark skies, hint, hint for future content that I'm not going to spoil yet, but it will allow me to go after some of those fainter, less known targets the more I'm able to research and really dive deeper and not go after some of the more obvious everyday targets. So that's really what I want to go after in the next year. Maybe go after some stuff that's either never been discovered or very rarely photographed, and really just go after some challenging targets that maybe need a ton of integration time. Just really challenge myself on target selection. But if you're new, don't worry about that. go after the big, bright, easier targets. And as you get more advanced, you can go after some of the more faint and difficult targets as you go. So guys, hopefully this was helpful in just getting your mindset on how to pick out the targets. I know a big thing for people is what filters to use, what scope to use, what time of month, what time of year. So that's really what I wanted to cover off on. Just pick the target that really makes sense for your given conditions. Don't try to fight it. You want to minimize your bad conditions like a full moon in a light polluted area, and then really maximize your dark sky conditions by using no filter and letting all that good light in. You can use narrowband filters from a dark sky site on a new moon, but I would really suggest that you don't, because you're going to allow all of that signal to hit the sensor and really be blown away with a type of image that you just can't get from home. So guys, challenge yourself. And as always, guys, I'm going to harp on you. The more integration time you get, the better your images are going to be, the better results you're going to get, and the better it's going to be to process and get an awesome final image. So have the patience, work hard, and get out there and create some great images. Until the next one, hopefully you can get some clear skies, and good luck picking your next astrophotography target.
Take your astrophotography to the next level. Head over to darkrangersinc.com, where you can sign up for one-on-one help and check out our Patreon community if you want to be part of the Cool Kids Club.